Hello everybody, welcome back to Reading for Vocabulary. I'm Brian Stewart. In this lesson, Lesson 9, you'll notice an interesting title, Bravo! Encore! These are words that we say when we see a performance, a band, or somebody does a really good job, and we clap our hands, bravo, bravo, right? Very good job. It's like, 잘했어요, right? And that is the title of this lesson. So what is this lesson about? Bravo, encore? What are we talking about? Well, in this lesson, we will learn about the New York Philharmonic. The New York Philharmonic. Well, it's a 힘들어 word, right? That's a difficult word. What is the Philharmonic? The Philharmonic, the New York Philharmonic, is a large group of musicians, people who play instruments, all different kinds of instruments, okay? So we'll learn about them. We'll think about different sounds and what sounds are good and what sounds are bad, okay? So of course for good sounds we say bravo, encore. For bad sounds we say boo, oh, no good, right? Okay, so let's get started with the lesson, but before we do that, to give you an idea of what the Philharmonic is, we can take a look at this video here. This video shows an orchestra. That's one of the words we'll learn in the vocabulary, orchestra. An orchestra, as you can see, are many musicians playing together. There's different sections. Here we have violins, right? Over here we have the cello, right? Over in the back you have people playing trumpets or different kinds of horns. You also have the drummers. They're all in different places in the orchestra. And of course you have the audience outside, and at the end, if the orchestra is good, they will say bravo, bravo, encore, right? They will show their appreciation. They will say, wow, that was a good musical performance. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here, this type of orchestra. Let's begin with the words. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, number one, word number one. The person who leads a musical group. In the video, maybe it's a little hard to see, but there was one man standing in front of all of the musicians. And usually he has a stick, right? And he waves it like this, okay? What do we call that person? He's the leader of the musical group. We call him the conductor. Conductor. He is the leader of an orchestra. He leads the musicians, right? So he tells them when to play or, how fast to play, and he's always doing this. He doesn't make any music, right? He's just telling the other musicians how to play, okay? And he's like the leader. He makes sure they sound good. Okay, so that's the conductor. Next, we have a public performance of music. So before we saw the video, there were many musicians, right? So many. But look at this picture. There's only 1, 2, 3, and maybe a number 4. There's a guy behind there. This would just be a band, not an orchestra. But a band, an orchestra, sometimes there's just one person, a singer, right? But it's any public performance of music. Any time that somebody plays music for the public and there's an audience, what do we call that event? There's a special word for that event. We call it a concert. Concert. A concert is any performance of music that you go to. It can be one singer, it can be 4 musicians, or it can be many musicians. It doesn't matter. When you go to listen to music, it's called a concert. Okay, next one. Of course, I've mentioned this already several times, right? Especially in the video, I showed there's different sections. Now, these instruments, well, that's the word right there. It's hard to say. It's an instrument, right? It's a device for playing music. There are many types of instruments, okay? Instrument or instruments, plural, right? Because here we see a violin, and of course here this is part of a tuba, and maybe this is a trombone over here. There's many kinds of instruments. Many kinds of instruments. I said like violin. Violin is a type. A tuba, right? The tuba is the big horn, right? That goes all around a person. And it's the big bell out here. And boom, 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 right? Okay, that's the tuba. Now you have a violin. A guitar is an instrument. A flute is an instrument. There are many types of instruments, devices for playing music. Instrument. Okay, next one. A large group of musicians who play together. Don't say Philharmonic. Philharmonic is the name of one of these. We're looking for orchestra. Orchestra. 3 syllables. Orchestra. Orchestra. An orchestra. The Philharmonic, the New York Philharmonic, is a type of orchestra. It's the name of that orchestra, right? But it's a large group. You can see many people. It's a very large group. And in that group, you have smaller groups, each playing different instruments. You may have a group of people who play the violin, a group of people who just sing, a group of people, just one person playing the piano, a group of people playing the flute. So an orchestra is a large group of musicians. In the orchestra, sometimes there are smaller groups of musicians playing the same instrument, and they can make a really big and powerful sound, and that's special about an orchestra. Okay? Next one. U.S. President Barack Obama, but that's not the word, right? Important in history. Someone who's important in history is, something that is important is historic. The reason they're using this picture is because he is the first black president. It's not because it's Barack Obama, it's because of the historic event. First time that a black person has been the president of the United States, that is historic. It's important in history. So, of course, first times are very important in history. Wars are important in history. Discoveries are important in history. These are historic people or historic events or historic places, right? We can use historic as an adjective to describe many different things. So historic people, historic places, historic events. Okay? Next one. 6, to go into. This woman is walking into, what is another word for that? Is to enter. She's entering the building. To enter the building. When you go to school, you enter the school. Then you enter your classroom. It means to go into a place. Next one. Wow, these kids, they want to be part of an orchestra, right? They're practicing. They're all lined up. They're playing, looks like a type of flute, to entertain people by playing music. So to entertain people by playing music, what word can we use? Perform. To perform. Now look, this is a verb. To perform. But we can also change this word to a noun, and we can say performance. Okay? If we add A and C, and we don't say to, we say a performance. That then becomes a noun. This is a noun because it is when people get together and they play music or they do something to entertain other people. We say it's a performance. What are they doing? They are performing. Okay? So perform is verb, performance is noun. Okay, next one. 8. A group of people who watch or listen to something. So this is an interesting word. It's an important word. Let me make sure I teach you something very important here because I hear a lot of Konglish, okay? Look at these people here. All of these people are looking at, they're listening to the music played by the orchestra. Now, these people are not musicians. They are not part of the orchestra. We call them the audience. The audience. But this is the important thing. The audience is all of these people, not one. You cannot say he is an audience. No, he is not an audience. He's part of the audience. The audience is a big group. The audience is a big group. So don't say the audiences clapped. No, the audience clapped. But if you want to talk about one person in the audience, you have to say audience member. Audience member. If you want to talk about one person or a few people, you can say audience member or audience members. Don't say the audiences. 아니요. It's only one audience. It's one group. It's like team, right? You wouldn't say the team kicked the ball. No, the team member kicked the ball, okay? When we say team, we're talking about a group of people. When we talk about audience, we're talking about the whole group of people. If you want to say one or two people in that group, you have to say audience member or audience members, okay? Please be careful. I hear a lot of mistakes with that. Okay, next one. A thin stick used to direct a musical group. I talked about this guy before. Remember him? He is a conductor. But I said he has a stick that he waves in front of the audience. Like you go, you guys play. Okay, you guys, right? And he'll use that stick to show the rhythm or how people should play the music, right? He uses a stick. What is the stick called? It's called a baton. Baton. A baton. So the conductor uses a baton when he conducts in an orchestra. A baton. Okay, next word. A person who performs and writes music. So if this boy can play the guitar, but he can also write the music. Some people just play music. Somebody else wrote it, they read it on a paper, and they play it. But if somebody who performs and writes music, what do we call them? We call them a musician, okay? Now, of course, they don't just also have to write music. Many musicians also just perform, okay? Somebody who performs music, we can say a musician. Somebody who writes music is a composer, okay? So, but somebody who performs and writes together, we can say, of course, they are a musician, okay? Next one. A large number of people. So a large number of people. What do we call that? Of course, we call that a crowd. When there's many, many, many people, right? So do you say 사람 많아요? Is that right? Okay, that's many, many people together. You can say it's a crowd. So if you go to a baseball game or a soccer game, the people, the audience in the stands, that is a crowd of people. Many people, okay? Next one, to guide or control. We say to lead. To guide or control something, we say is to lead. Maybe he is leading his team. So to lead. Lead is an irregular verb, so it changes form in the past tense. Let's see. It goes lead, led, led. So when we use this verb in the past, we use led, led, led. Lead, led, led. Okay, next one. We're talking about to make something happen in a certain way. To make something happen in a certain way. And we can see a calendar here, a calendar with many dates on it, and somebody's marked the 14th, and they did it with a love sign, right? So I'm wondering, what is that? That looks to me like it's February 14th, right? I don't know, but I'm guessing, because February 14th is Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day. So I think this calendar is of February, And 14th is marked with a heart because it's Valentine's Day, when boyfriends and girlfriends say, I love you to each other, right? But anyway, so what are they doing? They're making something happen in a certain way. They are saying that on the 14th, we're going to have Valentine's Day. We're going to have maybe a party, or we're going to have a date, or we're going to do something special for that day. What are they doing? They are setting that day, or they are setting a something, an event that will happen in a certain way. So to set. Set is an irregular verb. It doesn't change form in the past. Set, set, set is the verb. Next one. A large room for meetings or concerts. So it's a large room where people can have meetings, they can have concerts. What do we call that room? That room is called a hall. And many times you can see the word music hall, concert hall. Those words usually go together, okay? So a hall can be a large room where a performance or a meeting is held. Okay, next one. Wow, look at that. Many, many lights. To become full, in this case full of lights, we can say to fill. These lights fill the space. If that's the sky, stars fill the sky, right? So if you, there are many people, a crowd of people will fill the hall. They make it full. There's no more room. Okay. Next one, to move slowly on water or in the air. Look at this balloon. It's a big balloon or ball filled with air, right? It stays on the top of the water. If we put helium, right, some gas in this ball and let it go, maybe it will go up in the air. What do we say? It is floating. So something can float on the surface of the water, but if something flies just in the air, you know, it doesn't have any control, it just kind of floats in the air, like soap bubbles. You blow and all the little bubbles, they float away in the air. And clouds will float in the air. Some balloons will float. So to float, to move slowly on water or in the air. Okay, those are our words. Lots of words to remember, right? Let's see how well you remember what those words mean. Here we have exercise 1. Our job is to complete each sentence with a word from the box. So we have sentences here. We'll have 8 sentences. We have a blank in each sentence. We need to fill those blanks with these words. Let's review the words. First we have conductor, conductor. Next, instrument, instrument. Next, orchestra, orchestra. The next one is historic, historic. Next one, performed, performed. Now notice that performed, past tense, right? Because our root is here. Our basic word is here, perform, but it's past tense. We use performed. Okay, next one, audience, audience. Next one is concert, concert. And finally we have enter, enter. That's easier, right? Okay, let's take a look. Number 1, the pianist. Remember, a pianist is someone who plays the piano. The pianist's first beep was held last year. So think about this. The pianist, what does the pianist do? When a musician, and it doesn't matter if it's 1, 4 people, or many people, they entertain an audience with music, what do we call that? It's a noun, right? We say it's a concert, right? The pianist's first concert was held last year, because here we're looking for, it's like a performance. Concert and performance are the same, but don't get confused, because performed here is a verb. It's not performance, right? Concert is the word we're looking for. That is a noun to talk about the performance or the event that a musician plays to entertain people. Okay, number 2. The only musical beep I can play is the piano. So the piano is a type of this. Remember when we talked about this word, I said there are many types of these. They're devices that people play. A guitar, a flute, a tuba, right? The big tuba, or a violin. In this case, a piano. The only musical what? The only musical instrument. The only musical instrument I can play is the piano. I can ask you, can you play a musical instrument? Say, no, I can't play any musical instrument. Or, the only instrument I can play is the piano, or the guitar, or the flute, or whatever. Most people can play a drum, right? Maybe not well, but you can play the drum. Okay, next one. Number 3. I wanted to beep the room, but the door was locked. Well, think about that. You want to do something with the room. You obviously want to maybe go inside the room, but you can't because the door is locked. If the door is locked, you cannot go into the room. Go into? What word means to go into a place? What word here? You're probably looking for this one right here, right? Enter. I wanted to enter the room, but the door was locked. You can't enter when the door is locked. Okay, next one, number 4. Last night she beep a concerto on the piano. A concerto, by the way, is a type of performance. Okay? So, it's a type of musical piece that people will play. And she did it on the piano. So when somebody plays music, another word for that verb, right? And she did it last night, so it's in the past tense, right? What do we say? What verb means to play some type of performance, right? Like a concert or a performance. If you do that, you're performing. Last night she performed a concerto on the piano. Okay? So she performed. She performed a concert, or in this case a concerto, a performance on the piano. But if you say she performed a performance, that sounds a little weird. It's okay, but performance, too similar. So we say concert or something else. Okay. Number 5. All the people watch the beep event on television. The what event? What kind of event on television? And all the people watched it. So it was very important, right? It was very important. What kind of event can you watch on television? A conductor event? That doesn't make sense. An orchestra event? Well, that's weird. What about a historic event? All the people watched the historic event on television. That makes sense. That's correct. Okay? So if it's a historic event, it's very important. In history, many people will watch it. 6. He is the beep of this musical group. So we need one person, right? A word that describes a person in a musical group. Remember, one type of musical group is an orchestra. Well, what is one person in an orchestra? One person. An audience? No. An audience is a group of people, right? So it's not audience. Can it be conductor? He is the conductor of this musical group. That's the only word there that describes one person of a musical group. And remember, audience is not part of the musical group. And also, remember, audience is a group of people, not one person. We can't say he is the audience. That doesn't make sense, okay? Unless the audience is only one person, right? Only one person watching, that would make sense. But of this musical group, well, actually, that could be possible. But in this case, we're looking for conductor. Okay, next one. 7. There was a large beep in the music hall. There was a large what in the music hall? What are we looking for? We're probably looking for how many people came to see the concert. So there was a large, think about if there was a crowd of people, many people came to see the concert and they gathered in the music hall. Many people who watch a musical performance, we call them, of course, the audience. There was a large audience in the music hall. So audience is better for this sentence here. 8. A full-size beep is called a philharmonic. So there we have a little bit of answer as to what philharmonic means, right? We're talking about the New York Philharmonic. What is it? It's an orchestra, but it's a full-size orchestra. That means that an orchestra with all the different instruments, all the many people who play those different instruments, if you have a certain number of people playing certain instruments, we call that a philharmonic. So philharmonic is a type of orchestra. Okay? Let's stop there, of course. That's the end of our exercises. Let's take a short break now. We'll come back and we'll look at the reading, and the reading will be about the New York Philharmonic. So, take a short break first. We'll come back in just a few seconds. Okay, everybody, welcome back to the reading. Let's go over the reading section for Lesson 9 together. And, of course, we're talking about the New York Philharmonic. But let's see what the New York Philharmonic is all about. In the first page, let's read this first together. 100 musicians are dressed in black and white. As they take their seats, the audience quiets down. These musicians are the orchestra. So what we see here is the writer is describing the scene. What does it look like? And what do we hear? What do we experience at the beginning? Here we see 100 musicians. That's a lot of musicians, many people. They're dressed in black and white. If you look at their clothes, they have black jackets, white shirts on, right? So they're dressed in black and white. As they take their seats, the musicians take their seats, right? Also, the audience will take their seats too. People quiet down. That means the audience quiets down. They stop talking. Shh, be quiet. They want to listen to the music. These musicians are the orchestra. So the musicians, the 100 musicians dressed in black and white, these musicians are the orchestra. They are the orchestra. Okay, let's continue. In front of them, who's them? We're talking about the musicians. In front of the musicians that are in the orchestra. In front of the musicians stands the conductor. He slowly bows to the crowd. Now the concert may begin. Before we talked about the conductor. The conductor is the leader of the orchestra. Before the concert, what does he do? He slowly bows to the audience. He's like welcoming the audience. Welcome to our performance. After he does that, that's the signal. Now the concert may start. It may begin. After he bows, it's like a signal to the audience. We are going to start the concert. Okay? He bows to the audience. He turns around, and what does he do? At first, you hear just the violins. Then the flutes and clarinets begin to play. Soon, you are listening to the sounds of 30 different instruments. Okay? So the conductor turns around, he begins, right, the concert, and what do you hear at first? What's the first thing you hear? You hear just the violins. Remember, there are 30 different instruments, but first, all you hear is the group playing the violins. That's the first sound. Then, after that, you hear the flutes and the clarinets. Different instruments begin to play. So these sounds are mixed, and they're all playing at the same time. Soon, you are listening to the sounds of 30 different instruments. That means that first the violins play, then the flutes and clarinets, and then soon all the instruments are playing together. All 30 different instruments are playing together, and you are listening to that sound. Imagine, it would be very impressive, wouldn't it? All those different instruments playing together at the same time. A full-sized orchestra like this is called a philharmonic. Having so many musicians perform at the same time is not easy. They need someone to lead them. That's why the conductor is so important. It's his job to, or her job, it's his job to set the speed of the music. He also makes sure everyone is playing together. So this passage here is talking mostly about the conductor. How important is the conductor and what does the conductor do? So we also we see the definition of a philharmonic, a full-size orchestra. A full-size orchestra is called a philharmonic. What they mean there is that sometimes orchestras are fewer than 100 musicians. Maybe an orchestra some orchestras only have 30 musicians, or maybe even 20 musicians, right? That is not a full-sized orchestra. We don't call that a philharmonic. Remember how many musicians there were? They said there were 100 musicians, and 100 musicians are playing 30 instruments. So if you have 100 musicians, 30 different instruments, that's a special type of orchestra. We call it a philharmonic. Okay, that's what this sentence is telling us. So, of course, having so many musicians, that is the subject here. Having so many musicians perform at the same time, actually that's all the subject, there's our verb. Having so many musicians perform at the same time, that's the subject, long subject, is not easy. Of course it's not easy. 100 different people playing 30 different instruments, they all have to play at the right time, right? That's 너무 힘들어 to organize, right? How can you do that? Imagine even if you had only 5 of your friends playing instruments, somebody has to help them. Somebody has to lead them. This is 100 people and 30 different instruments, right? It's not easy. It's 너무 힘들어. They need someone to lead them. So we need a leader. Who is the leader? That's why the conductor is the leader. The conductor is so important, is very important. It's his job. Remember, conductors aren't only men. We could say his or her, right? Because, of course, women can be conductors too. It's his or her job to set the speed of the music. The speed of the music is important. You don't want some people to play too fast because the other people, they don't know what's going on, right? And so the music will be all mixed up, right? So the conductor starts the music and sets the speed, how fast each group should play. If one group should play faster, he's like this, right? If one group is slower, he's going like this, slow down, right? So the conductor is leading the musicians and telling them, helping them play together and telling them what to do. He also makes sure everyone is playing together. Of course, make sure that everybody is doing, playing together so it's not chaos, it's not mess, okay? Okay, next one. As the conductor waves his baton, the concert hall fills with music. The beautiful sounds float through the air. Okay, that's interesting. It's just kind of describing the process, right? Here we see the conductor, he's got his baton, and he's like this. He's telling, he's instructing some people. As he waves, of course, you can wave your hand, goodbye, hello, or you can wave a stick, right? Up and down. And if you look at a conductor, that's what they're doing. They're waving their baton in the air. The concert hall fills with music. Now this is interesting. You can't see music, right? But sounds can fill the room. It means you can hear the sound anywhere in the hall. So the music fills the hall. The hall or the concert hall fills with music. Interesting. It's an interesting way to say that. The beautiful sounds float through the air. Again, we can't see music, right? Music isn't a thing that we can touch, but sound it sounds like it's floating through the air. It's going through the air. It's floating through the air. It's very beautiful, very peaceful. This is a very nice image, a very nice picture. So the beautiful sounds float through the air. Okay, in the next part, we're going to talk about a special orchestra, the New York Philharmonic. Let's take a look. The New York Philharmonic is world famous. Their first concert was held in 1842. Today, about 180 concerts are given each year. On February 26, 2008, a historic concert was held in North Korea. Okay, so this passage is talking about the New York Philharmonic. Before we were talking about just an orchestra, but now we're talking about specifically a group called the New York Philharmonic. That's their name. That's the name of that orchestra. They are world famous. That means many people in many different countries all over the world, they know them, right? They are very famous, world famous, known all over the world. Their first concert was held in 1842. That's a long time ago, right? You weren't born yet. Your parents weren't born. Your grandparents weren't born, right? That's a really long time ago. Okay, 1842. So the New York Philharmonic is a very old philharmonic. It's a very old orchestra. Today, about 180 concerts are given each year. Think about that. 180 concerts in 1 year? That's a lot of concerts. 1 year, how many weeks are in a year? There's 52 weeks. 52 weeks in a year. They give 180 concerts. That's more than one a week. That's more than twice a week. That's almost like 3 concerts every week that they give. So maybe about 3 concerts a week are given by the New York Philharmonic. They are very busy, okay? On February 26, 2008, a historic concert was given. Why is it historic? Because it was in North Korea, right? 북한, right? In North Korea. That's strange, isn't it? Usually, other countries cannot go, the people from other countries cannot go into North Korea. So this was a special event, right? It was a historic event because it was very special in history. Okay, let's move on then. Usually, North Korea does not let people enter the country. But the New York Philharmonic was a special case. The concert was shown on TV as well. People all over the world watched and listened. So like I said, usually in North Korea, they don't let people from other countries enter the country. That's 너무 힘들어, right? They want to protect their country. They want to control their country maybe too much. But anyway, North Korea does not let people come into the country. But, however, right, the New York Philharmonic was a special case. A special case? What does that mean? When something is unique, usually you have rules, right? You have rules. For example, you should not run in school. You shouldn't talk loudly in class. Those are the rules. Everybody follows those rules. But in some situations, unusual or unique situation, you can break the rules or you can break what's normal or what's tradition. That is a special case. So a special case is going against tradition or the ordinary rules that usually people behave in this way. But special case, they allow an exception, a unique situation. Okay, so it's a special case. The concert was shown on television as well. It wasn't just for people to watch in person, they also showed it on television. People all over the world, everywhere around the world, watched and listened because it was a historic event. Okay. Hard work and talent have made the New York Philharmonic very successful. Obviously, 180 concerts a year, they're very successful, they're very busy. They have some of the best musicians in the world. Do you play a musical instrument? Maybe if you practice every day, you can play for them too. Interesting. Okay, good. So, hard work hard work and talent. So, two important things that have made the New York Philharmonic very successful. If you want to be successful, you have to do many things. Hard work and talent are probably necessary. They're the two most important things to get success. Of course, hard work is very important. Talent, it depends on what you're doing. Musicians obviously have to have a lot of talent to be able to play the musical instrument. So, they have some of the best musicians in the world. The New York Philharmonic has musicians from all over the world who come and play. So the question here is, it's interesting. Here, the passage takes a different approach. Now the passage is asking about you directly. It includes you in the reading because they ask you, do you play a musical instrument? Do you play a musical instrument? Remember when I talked about instrument before? I asked you this question. Do you play a musical instrument? Maybe you play the piano. Maybe you play the violin. Maybe you can play the trumpet. Right? Do you play a musical instrument? Maybe if you practice every day, right, and you put some hard work into it, if you practice every day, maybe you can play for them too. Something to think about. If you enjoy playing music, if you really like playing a musical instrument, practice every day, maybe you'll become good enough and you can join the New York Philharmonic. It's a very impressive dream, isn't it? That would be a goal for your life. Okay, if you are interested in that. Okay, next one. We're going over the reading comprehension questions. So this story is about, what is this story about? What have we been talking about in this story? We have A, musicians, B, an orchestra, C, a conductor, D, instruments. So think about the reading passage. The reading passage started by describing a scene, right? Many musicians come in, the audience quiets down, a conductor bows, the music begins to play. We talked about how many musicians there are, how many musical instruments they use. We talked about the New York Philharmonic. What are we talking about? Are we talking about musicians? Well, we're not talking about individual musicians. We're talking about a large group of musicians. What is a group of musicians? A group of musicians is an orchestra. So this story is really about an orchestra, right? Because we're talking about the group of musicians and we're talking about a special orchestra, the New York Philharmonic, which is a special kind of orchestra. We're not talking about a conductor. A conductor, sure, was mentioned, but that's a small detail of the reading passage. And we're not talking about instruments. Again, they mentioned instruments very briefly, but that's just a small detail. The whole passage is about an orchestra. Okay, what is an orchestra? What is it like? What's the scene of an orchestra? What is a famous example of an orchestra? The New York Philharmonic. We're talking about an orchestra. Okay, B, the New York Philharmonic performed a historic concert where? We talked about that, right? I said Pukan. Where's Pukan? South Korea? No. South Korea is Hanguk, right? New York. Not in New York and not in Philadelphia, but in North Korea. That was historic because it's a special place. It was a special case, right? North Korea doesn't usually allow concerts to go in there, so it was a special case, a historic concert in North Korea. So the New York Philharmonic performed a historic concert in North Korea. Okay, next one. A conductor's job is to beep. What does the conductor do? We talked about that the conductor is a leader, but does the conductor lead the audience? Is the audience performing? Right? The conductor doesn't lead the audience just sits there and goes, wow, right, listens. So nobody leads the audience. That's not correct, right? A conductor's job is to make sure the music is slow. Well, that sounds a little weird because the conductor doesn't just slow down the music. The conductor also speeds up the music. So the conductor isn't just making sure the music is slow. The conductor is also making sure the music is fast. It depends on the situation. So B is not correct. The conductor's job is to make sure the music is fast. Well, that's the same as B, right? That doesn't make sense. So that doesn't make sense. So we have D. A conductor's job is to make sure everyone is playing together. And that's what we're talking about, right? Remember, we talked about that. We said there are so many musicians. There are 100 musicians. They need help, right? They can't see the other musicians maybe because they have their instruments. They need to see somebody who's going to tell them to help them play together well. You have so many musicians, you need to make sure everyone is playing together. That is the conductor's job. So a conductor's job is to make sure everyone is playing together. And that is the job of the conductor. Okay, number 4. A full-size orchestra, we're talking about a philharmonic, is made up of beep, what? What makes up a full-size orchestra or a philharmonic? What did the reading passage say? Well, a full-size orchestra is made up of a conductor, 30 different instruments, and an audience. An audience? An audience makes up an orchestra? That sounds strange. The audience members are not part of the orchestra, right? That's silly. That doesn't make sense. The audience just comes to see the orchestra. They're not part of the orchestra. Okay, B. A leader, 30 musicians, and a baton. Okay, that's kind of silly right there. A baton is just, it's what the conductor uses. It's not really part of an orchestra. So B is a silly answer. How about C? A conductor, 100 different instruments, and 30 musicians. Well, wait a minute. Think about that for a second. You have 30 musicians and 100 different instruments? How can that work? That means that each person has to have more than one instrument. In fact, 30 people would have to play more than 3 instruments. For example, right, the violinist playing the violin, right, they'd have to throw it down and then pick up the flute, right? And then throw that down and do the cello. That's crazy, right? Usually musicians concentrate on just playing one instrument. You can't have 100 different instruments. You can't have 100 different instruments and only 30 people to play them. They'll be running around like crazy. That would be a mess. So it can't be C. That's silly. How about D? A conductor, 100 musicians, and 30 different instruments. That makes sense, doesn't it? Because you have many people, 100 people, and only 30 instruments. That means many of those musicians are playing the same instrument, right? So you have a group of people playing the violin. You have a group of people playing the flutes, right? That makes sense. So D is our answer. A full-size orchestra is made up of a conductor, 100 musicians, and 30 different instruments. Okay, let's review. The New York Philharmonic. The New York Philharmonic is world famous. We talked about that. They're known all over the world. And part of the reason why they're world famous is because the Philharmonic has musicians from all over the world. They're not just Americans. They could be Russians, right? They could be Africans or Egyptians, right? They could be from Asia, Chinese, Koreans. They're from all over the world. They are world famous. Today, about 100 concerts are given each year. We talked about that too. That's at least 3 concerts a year. They're very busy. 3 concerts a week, I'm sorry. That's at least 3 concerts a week because, 52 weeks in a year, 180 concerts. That's a lot of concerts every year. And finally, they have some of the best musicians in the world. We talked about that. They have musicians from all over the world. They want to be part of the New York Philharmonic. And that's why the passage says, if you play an instrument, right? And if you play it well, if you like to play the instrument, and if you practice every day, maybe you can join the New York Philharmonic also. Okay? That would be a very exciting dream, our exciting goal. Okay, well that wraps it up for the New York Philharmonic. Hope you've learned a lot about orchestras and about a certain type of musical performance. Okay, we'll see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.